have to grab you two.
Second time. Okay, I'm good.
You're not supposed to do that. You're young. I'm old. I'm supposed to do it. He did it for me.
We're related. That's why.
He's trying to help me every way he can. You are on Joshua's Road. It's been concreted, and of course it's settled. And this is all original finding. Well-dressed stones on beautiful black stones below. You will see that the wooden beams have been replaced, but the snake, you see it up at the top, that's all original underneath it. So this would have been the road that Joshua would have taken it. It's from 1500 to 1200 BC, and therefore it was the only 4 rooms. You'll see these guard rooms either side. And no, it's always after the second gate. So when peaceful times, this is kind of a wide space in the gate where you get the latest news, where tradesmen who are traveling can sell clothes and bring stuff. And this is where court is held, in the inner gate, in the justice in the gate, Amos talks about. But original stones and original entrance from the time of Joshua. Right straight back was where that big jewelry case was found, and that was the king's quarters in that particular time. That's where that ivory box was found. So now come on through. So now we're inside the second gate, and the guard rooms are inside the city. So where we are was all dirt, just like that. There is Solomon's city gate. Notice that Ahab filled the center room to get back to 2. And that was loaded with stones. And so Solomon always had 3 rooms each side. At peaceful times, maybe it was more social, a bigger city perhaps. But interesting that he had sealed it, and it was known that Ahab, as well as Solomon and David's plan, was to have Phoenicia participate in the building of the temple. And it is clear this was done by Phoenician construction, because those are called stretcher headers. The stretcher is in the middle of a long stone, but it's kind of rectangular in cut. I'm talking about the right side of this first room. Look at the 3rd row up, this long stone. You see what I'm talking about? That's a stretcher. The stone next to it's the same, but it's going the other direction. So this is stretcher header construction, and that was Phoenician building. And the Phoenicians, Hiram, helped Solomon build the temple. And there was good relations with Ahab and Phoenicia, because Ahab's wife, Jezebel, was the princess of Ethbaal, who was the king. So there's still influence in Ahab's time of building a city. So it was easy to see later that this was Ahab, not Solomon at that time, because he filled that middle room. Still has 2 rooms, but this was the same side. And again, as archaeology expresses itself, you have to destroy your experiment as you make it. The only way to get down this level was take out the gate on this side. So here you have 1407 for Joshua's time, and up there is Solomon's time, 971. So you can see the difference between the two. 971 is when he took over the throne. While I was digging here, a young man, Israel Finkelstein, who was very sharp in his becoming an archaeologist, and we stayed at the Megiddo kibbutz behind the whole time, and he has now championed the idea that David was not more than a chieftain, and it was Ahab that should have been given the credit for everything Solomon has done. And he also believes that the evidence of the Israelis coming, which was collar-rimmed jars, it's like a clerical collar around the top of a jar, usually only found in Hebrew context. However, there have been now more found in Canaanite times. And so he was saying you can't use collar rim jars anymore to prove because of the pottery. And pottery typology means pottery shapes, which goes from utilitarian and quickly made to beautiful pots that when you have more time, you take more time on the pot. More than utilitarian, it becomes aesthetic as well. And so he was lecturing one night that the Exodus never happened, and that gradually, that by the way of judges instead of Joshua, they gradually took over the country, and you couldn't depend on collar rim relations anymore. And so afterwards I said, Israel, I want to pose a situation to you. I said, suppose the Bible is right. Suppose that the people were in the Exodus and died in the wilderness wandering there, and only the children of those made it into the country. And so when they came here, they didn't bring pottery with them, because where did they get the clay in the desert? And so they gave an order now, no, don't destroy the pottery. So that collar rim pottery was Canaanite, but the Hebrews used it. And so they used the pottery. He says, well, it could have happened, and that was it. So that he just has championed this idea. And Amon Bentor, with whom I worked, says Israel Finkelstein is crazy. There has been a contest between Hebrew University in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, Jerusalem in archaeology, and one of Yigel's students championed this more liberal view, so that the University of Tel Aviv is always more liberal in their interpretation of the Bible. But when Amnon Ben-Tor, we were digging, he was looking for a pharaoh scarab that would confirm what he thought, the 1290 conquest of the country. And so you find this contest going, and anytime they find something that the Bible refutes the Israel Finkelstein, and it's coming slowly, because now David's name has been found. In fact, part of the temple, of the palace, was found. And, well, it's a bit of interpretation. So, when you get a position you think you're right, you're going to defend it. And that's what happened. So he thinks that everything this would be Ahab. And since Phoenicia influenced both, from that term, it's easy to see it could have been. But then when you get this kind of difference, and you still maintain this was Solomon, it is interesting that it requires more soldiers, but it might have been more peaceful times, more people visiting, that kind of thing. So now, come with me. This is going through the gate now. We would have to go that way when it was done, but this path was made for us that we can go up.
Hey, Prof. How often would Ahab and Solomon have visited these locations?
Good question, but only they would come for inspection, but they had an appointed governor for everyone. Canaanites would have called it the king, and of course there was no unification with them. But there would be a governor that was administrator directly working on it. And then the king, there was one seal found here belonging to Shema, servant of Jeroboam, and that was a servant of the king, but the king didn't live here, but he is administrator, and he would stamp it. It's a picture of a roaring lion, and then there's a fish hook at the top, which is an ancient L, and L before a name means belonging to. And Shema, who is not mentioned in the Bible, was his assistant, and then Eved Jeroboam, which means servant of Jeroboam, and that would have been an official seal of the king, who wouldn't visit here unless it was necessary during the periods. Here is a cup. Never seen cups except in the Chalcolithic period, a kind of a ice cream cone type of cup. And I think when David wrote 23rd Psalm, my cup runneth over, it's a horse tank, and he's thinking of water so copious that it's overflowing the horse tank. we read it and we think, my cup runneth over, little teacup. But these were horse tank water for the horses, and they were in all of the storage barns, or the. You see, Yadin said they were horse stables, and his opponent said no, they were storage barns. And one of the problems was it wasn't wide enough for a horse, that another horse could walk behind it. So you'd have to put them all in one after another, bring them all out one after another. And so, I mean, his name's escaping me now, but he said, Yadin says, well, small horses, so they could get behind. And then the idea is that the horses came in with the carts into the middle room, and then they offloaded the material. But nevertheless, Yadin's idea has prevailed, 400 horses, because it would have been not Solomon's, but all the way back to 4th millennium, which was the Neolithic period, the New Stone Age. And they had worship centers, and that was the one that's 30 feet by 30 feet with well-dressed steps. It was interesting. My digging was done right down here. We found a worship center, and there was a cow skeleton was found, so we called it the Cow Palace. And I was one of the most prominent openings to archaeology now is bone reading. And you have bone specialists, archaeology specialists who know a sheep bone from a goat bone, a cat bone, a dog bone. And so they're scarce. And the director here told me, Amnon Bentor, told me that we are 3 years behind getting a person who can read bones. And so bone archaeology has some influence now, because one of the things that establishes Jewish village is bone taboo. You don't find any pig bones. And you know, when they disappear, that has to do with the prohibition. And so we would dig up, when I would finish it, when I came to a spot, I am finding hundreds of bones right at the edge, and bones we saved. And there were little bones. I remember taking one, I couldn't even get it around, so small, get it around my little finger. And I'm putting them daily into sacks, and they are sent to the quarters waiting for a bone archaeologist. Well, it happened that one came. I didn't know her. I think she was from the University of Alabama. And she was standing there, and I'm digging these bones, and she'd come out specifically because I had been putting those bones in, and when she introduced herself, she's the bone archaeologist, and I said, what am I finding here? I knew they they used sacrificed doves for people who are poor, that would explain the small bones, but I can't imagine why there's so many right here in this one spot. She says, well, you haven't found bones of sacrificed animals. You have found the regurgitated remains of an owl.
Ah!
And what it was in dereliction. There was nothing there, and an owl won't come where people are settled, and it roosted on a wall. She says right up here there must have been a wall, and they eat mice and lizards and anything they can get whole, and then at their spot they regurgitate the bones. And they were regurgitating the bones layer after layer, so we knew when that was not used. But one of the interesting things, we're digging, and so guides come up here and say, well, there's a sacrificial altar, and they found a lot of children's bones around there. And so that's what the guides were telling. None. It was only animals, but it was an early Canaanite altar, 5,000 years old. Losing it. Morah. On the other side was Witch of Endor, and Mount Gilboa's over here, and that's about the 6 miles it would have taken Saul to get up to that other side and then come back. So the Philistines were coming in from this section. They owned Beit Shan, which was where we passed, and they wanted to join this together. And Saul was trying to keep it from happening, coming up Mount Gilboa and came down in the valley. We'll see that when we get to Jezreel. But now you've seen where Nazareth is, right back over there. You see the city That's Nazareth. And there is Mount Tabor between the two mountains straight out there. That's where Deborah and Barak had 10,000 horsemen. They were taken up on top of that mount because there's only one serpentine path to the top. And Jabin had Sisera, who had 900 chariots of iron. Well, this is the beginning of the Iron Age, so it was not chariots of total iron. It was brackets. It was strengthening the corners or whatever. But they had the technology of iron. They knew of ore, but they didn't know you had to have hot wood to make it come out. And so they were one of the first ones to have iron. And that's where they collected the 10,000 swordsmen going up. And you read the 5th chapter of Judges, and you find the poem of Deborah, and she talks about the horses stamping, the horse's hoof beating, so they're stuck in the mud. They can't pull the chariot. And then it talks about the rain came down and an earthquake and all of that. It seems God timed weather that made their 900 chariots inoperable. And even Sisera ran out on foot and went to Jael's tent, where he got a tent peg knocked through his temple and was killed. And so that's an interesting story. I don't think I've mentioned it, but Sisera is going. He doesn't know she's a Kentite. Normally Kentites would be Canaanite friends, but level. And you can see the gap where under Solomon's time the women would go through that gap and down to the water source. There was no approach inside. So Ahab knew, I'm going to be a warrior king and they're going to come after me. So he had that excavation done. How many men would have died? When you come to Hezekiah's tunnel, how long it would have taken, it's difficult to know, but they had to get that water inside since the enemy would look for the spring. And so they would hide it by covering it over, and then the water would come in. And it was dug so that the spring would bring it up to the base, but if there wasn't enough water, then they could walk to the source. And now there will be water there since it's rained, but not enough. They use it for irrigation now. Now remember, there's 167 steps. Don't count them. I may be wrong. But I was here one time, and if God was ever a part of that trip, it's certain. I had a young son of the pastor from that church who was a wrestler. He was in high school, but he was a really strong wrestler. And a lady behind him, elderly, and she was coming behind, and she slipped and was going to fall. I know she would have knocked me down. She was the third one in. He grabbed the railing like that and held her from falling. And so keep your hand on the railing as you go and watch your steps, because some are well dressed, but others are the original. So just, no, all the way through is straight. But just keep your hand on the railing so you don't stumble.
I think so. Pretty much down there. When was this accident? Oh, I think we have water.
Okay.
I wonder how they got down that far. That's incredible. And all this rock.
Yeah, they waited through there. Yeah, they were waist deep. I had a video of some folks that went through here. They had to wait through here waist deep.
No, look at the tunnel. Underneath the tunnel, there's no deep water.
No, but she's getting away.